You're cleaning up the dishes, huh?
You ready?
I've been ready, bro.
Oh.
You have to switch over to this side because the sun's gonna be right. You're taking all my light. There you go. Yeah. So let's start off with some basics. All right, like who are you and where you're from, and just the beginning.
I'm LaRay Lashley. Well, Joseph LaRay Lashley, but I go by LaRay. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland.
So they call you Ray Ray, but you actually go by LaRay.
Yeah.
And they got it wrong.
No, I let everybody call me Ray Ray. A lot of people don't know how to pronounce my name when they see it spelled out.
Okay.
They call me Lee Ray or LeRoy, and so I keep it simple for them and just say Ray Ray.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Been out here a little more than 2 years now.
Okay, now you were raised in Baltimore?
Born and raised in
Born
Baltimore.
and raised in Baltimore. Let's talk a little bit about your childhood. Your mother and father were together when you were...
They were, my mother and father were together up until I turned around 6 years old.
6 years old?
And they separated.
All right.
And she remarried when I was about, let's say, 11 or 12.
Okay.
And she raised me as best as she could. Disciplined me as best as she could. Being a mother, my father wasn't around, so of course I took advantage of that.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
A brother and a sister.
Older or younger?
Both younger.
Both
I'm
younger.
the oldest.
Okay, so how much younger were they than you are?
I have a sister that's 1 year younger and a brother that's 11 years younger.
Okay, so did you find yourself having to sort of lead or be the head of the house? I mean, but you had a stepfather, right?
Yeah, I had a stepfather.
And how was your relationship with him?
Not good at all.
Not good at all?
Not good at all. He was actually a Baltimore City police, so of course we butt heads.
Okay. So he was a policeman for Baltimore.
Yeah.
So what caused you to bump heads? You were 11 years old when he first came in the house, right?
Yeah, but of course, I still had that tie with my father.
Okay.
My father and I, we always remained close. So for me, another guy, it was like me not being loyal to my father, so to speak.
Okay.
And I was real protective of my mother anyway. I didn't want to see it with no other guys anyway. If it wasn't my father, I didn't want nobody else around my mother.
Okay.
We can go somewhere as simple as the supermarket, and if I see a man looking at my mother, I'll be like, what are you looking at? If he's in the car beside us, what you doing looking at my mother? That's how it was. So I didn't want her with nobody else. But if it wasn't my father, nobody else.
Okay, now you started school in Baltimore.
Yeah, and elementary, junior high school, I always was in the top class. Elementary, I was in what they called the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Education. Then I went to high school, I was in the Enrich program, and then, junior high I was in the Enrich program. In high school, I was in college prep. But of course, I didn't finish high school because I ended up, my mother always said I got hooked up with the wrong crowd, but I sort of was like the leader of the wrong crowd. So I didn't get hooked up with the wrong crowd. I made that choice. And, even with me not going to school, kept getting expelled from school, I still maintained an average of an A because I always did my schoolwork. It's just that I didn't go to school all of the time. I would hook school a lot.
Okay, now, why and how did it start that you started leaving school? I mean, what was it about it that got you pulled out of school?
Well, I can go as far back as elementary school. You know, elementary school, I had already started hooking school, and I only had to be at school half a day. And I remember one of the times that I got caught hooking school. I was right down the street at the playground, and just so happened my sister was in the car with my stepfather, and she pointed me out. And by the time they took me to school, I only had like 5 minutes left in school, and I was going back home anyway. But going through elementary school, like from I guess the first grade to the sixth grade, I didn't hook school. I didn't start hooking school again until my 9th grade year of junior high school.
And what?
I started hanging on the street corners, started smoking marijuana, wanted to be like my older cousin, which was raised as my older brother because his mother and my mother, they're sisters, but his mother passed away when he was like 6 years old, and my mother had took him in.
Okay.
So, and my grandmother had took him in. So we were raised more like brothers, and then throughout the neighborhood, he was like, you know, an idol to a lot of us kids. So I wanted to be like him.
What made him an idol?
Everybody respected him because he was sort of like the bad boy. He used to do a lot of mischievous things, stealing, breaking in cars, breaking car windows. Back when we were little, that's what they did. You know, he would, and he was real good with like making things with his hands, you know, wagons and all that type of stuff. And he would, you know, do tricks on bikes. He could swim real good. So a lot of us kids on our block and blocks over from us all looked up to Tony, you know. And being as though he was like my brother or cousin, I tried to be that same way.
Okay, but how would that get you in trouble? I mean, it sounds like he just did some sort of minor stuff. I mean,
oh well, he used to fight all the time, and you know, he would get in trouble in school at times. And he was Tony was 4 or 5 years older than I was, so me looking up to him, I gotta do either what he's doing or either a little bit more than what he's doing. But we used to get in trouble regardless because he would take me a lot of the time because when we leave out, they would say, take Lorraine with you, you know. And I actually got into trouble a lot of times, you know, following behind Tony.
so what was your first major run-in with real trouble?
My real trouble?
Yeah.
The first major real trouble, you talking about like with the law?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Oh, well, with the law, my first time getting in any trouble with the law, I probably was like 15 or 16. And that was up my school, actually. You know, I got into an altercation with a guy. And during this time, I ran like a little gang in my school and broke a dude's nose and shin, and I ended up getting locked up for it. Went to court though, and ended up just having to pay his doctor bills and restitution to the courts. But that wasn't nothing like major, or it wasn't nothing to persuade me to stop doing what I was doing because I had a little reputation by then. You know, I was considered a bad boy, and I was small and I had a little man's complex. You know, because for one, I was small, like I said. I was short, I was skinny, and I was light skinned. So where I come from, you know, a lot of people considered light skinned punks and all that, and I was not going for it, you know. And You know, so I had that complex, and I felt like I had to represent. I actually have a buddy who's 6 years younger than me, and he used to follow me around when he was like 13 and I was around 18 or 19. And later on, he told me one day, he said, man, it's like you put light-skinned guys on the map. You know, because I definitely didn't play that. You know, I felt like I really had to represent a man because I was light-skinned.
What kind of challenges would that bring about?
For me, it was always being tested. You know, I felt like everybody was challenging me because of my size physically and because of my complexion. You know, and at times it got rather difficult because I would only see people that way. You know, like, okay, based on how he look, he dark skinned and carrying himself a certain way, he gonna try me, you know. So what I actually started doing was looking for the dark skinned dudes who were supposed to be tough and bad, and I would go try them first. I got to a point where I was never bullied, but I got to a point where I didn't like people bullying other people. Now, if you was an individual that considered yourself being hard and tough, and somebody picked on you, I had no problem with that. But if you was hard and tough and you picked on somebody that was weak, so to speak, then I would go at you, you know. And like coming up, my teachers would say that, you know, I was a bully's bully. You know, I used to bully the bullies, and I was little, you know, but I just had this drive inside of me, and I knew I could fight, so to speak, wrestle, because I was taught pressure points and all of that stuff coming up, so I didn't mind fighting anybody, you know, and you know, I always held in my heart that if you're my size or a little bit bigger than me, you're not going to be able to do nothing, you know. You have to outweigh me 2 times, 3 times. But if you're my size or a little bigger than me, I got you, you know. And, I still actually hold true to that to this day. I still carry that with me to this day. You know, some things I haven't quite shaken yet, but that one there I hold dear and true, you know. But I don't go around bullying, of course, you know.
Okay, now, we're here to talk about you and your life and how you overcame certain things in your life. You want to get into a little bit of that in the first section here? Because we're going to do more sessions than this, but let's talk about really what you see yourself as being now and how you got to where you are now from where you came.
Now I see myself as a positive impact on people. You know, I see myself as one of the guys who was in the struggle, endured the struggle, and came out of the struggle. You know, where I was raised and my perception of what a man was as I was coming up was totally false. You know, my perception of what a man was selling drugs and standing on the corners and doing everything involved with the drug activity, you know, the violence and everything. And that was my perception growing up. So as I got older, I took on that, you know. I sold the drugs and did everything involved the drug game, you know, with the violence and everything. And I clearly thought that I was being a man, but in all actuality, I found out years later, you know, that wasn't me being a man at all. Looking back on it now, I actually consider that being a coward, because I went to prison for a nice length of time, quite a few times, and left my children out there for an actual man to raise. So that's something I hold deep in my heart, that I neglected my responsibilities as a father. I neglected my responsibilities as a big brother, as a son, cousin, because I had a lot of cousins and everything looked up to me as well. And my cousins, just about every cousin I have, consider me their favorite cousin. So not only did I let myself down, I let a lot of other people down too, because unfortunately I had family members that followed in my footsteps and didn't make it out, ended up dying. I have some of them that's still stuck in the streets, that they don't want to do anything but that drug lifestyle. I consider that, from my personal opinion behind that, is me to do that, even though I was ignorant towards it, because for me, I felt as though I didn't know any better. I feel as though that was the coward way, when I left the streets, my children were, I had 3 children, and I had one born actually the day before I was sentenced. Yeah, I went to court to get sentenced, and my son was born the day before, so that made my 4th child at the time. And when I came home, they were teenagers, and that's something that I hold dear to me, even though while I was in prison all of those years, I had no vision, but that same lifestyle. So when I went home after those years, a few years later, I went back for an additional nice period of time, because again, I had no vision other than those streets. So I came home, made the promises, and went back, so I actually had scarred my children with that. My children took offense to that, for real. They started separating themselves from me. They didn't believe me anymore. They thought that all I was going to do was that lifestyle back in prison, and at that time I had 3 sons, and when I came back home after that first long stint, I ended up having another son. So now I have 4 sons and a daughter, but 2 of my sons ended up into that lifestyle, and I'm blessed now that they got out of it, and they have, they actually have great jobs, but they had that run-in with the law as well. And it's sad because one day, my son actually got locked up this particular night. The very next morning, those same police grabbed me, and for something totally different. But when they saw me, they told me, they was like, "Oh, you know what? We got your son last night." And I was like, "Wow, that's something." The exact same police, and I didn't even know my son had got locked up the night before. But I'm just blessed that none of my children are in that lifestyle anymore. My daughter was even in it as well, but none of them are in it anymore. Like I said, they all had wonderful jobs, so I'm blessed for that.
Now this cycle in the community, in the hood, father goes to jail, children go to jail. I mean, I've met people that were in prison, and I said, "Well, how did you survive?" He said, "Well, my father was in there, my uncle's in there, my grandfather. They have a family reunion in prison." What does that say about the community if we're feeding this prison system with our young warriors and young daughters?
Well, I can only speak from where I'm from, and from Baltimore. That's a big business. It's a big business, and it's like we're targeted, and like when I was coming up, the younger generation follow the same suit. They don't have a vision, you know. They don't have a vision, and I heard it said before, you know, we don't need provision, we need a vision. Mm-hmm. You know, simple as that. And my vision back then was the same as a whole lot of these other young guys coming up, is stand on the corner selling drugs. That's the only way out if you don't have a career with sports. You know, like where we come from, it's either sports or the streets. You know, it's really no in between with us.
But how does it get that way? I mean, this is America. I mean, you're supposed to be able to get an education and do anything you want to. So how is it in our community we see sports and drugs as the only opportunity?
Because for us, a lot of us, that's reality. You know, we can see the TV shows and the movies and everything. We see how we're portrayed in there. And why do you think we're portrayed in there like that? Because that's the same way that they see us as well. You know, our educational system is not the same as out in the county where I come from. They weren't the same. I may have went to school when I was in the 10th grade, but if I'd have went to a county school, that 10th grade curriculum would have been more advanced than my 10th grade curriculum. You know, it's like it's designed to keep us, I guess, 2 steps back. And a lot of us see it just like that. A lot of us that have families and big families, and we can go around in these big families and you'll see that rarely anybody make it out. You know, so when you're born into that, you know, it's like, okay, and it's sad to say that I know certain families, you know, not mine particular with this case, but I do have friends who family members will say, well, you know, when you turn 13 or 14, boy, you gotta hit the block. You know, that's what's embedded in them. You know, now I wasn't told that from my family and my grandparents, because my grandparents, my father's parents and my mother's parents, well, you know, God-loving grandparents, and you know, my grandfather was real strict, you know, and he didn't play that. I got him on my arm, my grandmother and my grandfather, and he didn't play that, you know. That's the one who really disciplined me, Tony, my cousin Gary, Trey, my sister, a few of my other cousins. He's the one who laid down the law, but he was older, you know, he was elderly at that time. You know, when I was coming up, my grandfather, when I was 10, my grandfather had to be in his 60s already. So it wasn't too much he can do, and he wasn't going to be around too much longer, you know, and I wasn't going to be a part of that household too much longer anyway. So,
when did you leave home?
I left home at 15.
Where did you go?
The streets. I actually lived in the back of my mother's house in the garage for a period of time, and I actually went to school from the garage, where my buddies in the neighborhood for months didn't even know I lived in the garage because I went to school, and I still maintained the A grade. And it just so happened that one particular night, it rained so bad and so hard, and it was cold, that I couldn't stay in the garage anymore, and I left out to look for other garages actually to break into so I could sleep in there, and I couldn't find any. And I happened to go on my block, and we lived on a corner, so as I got to the corner, I saw my buddy's mother leaving out for work. And it was raining, so I saw her leaving out for work, so I ducked down behind the car because I was crying, I was freezing, and she stopped, and she kept calling my name, and I wouldn't, you know, answer at first, and then she kept on, so I finally answered, and she told me to go in her house, and she told me not to go to school the next day and wait for her to get off, because she was going to call my mother. So me, I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble now. You know, cats get ready to be out the bag, that I'm living in the garage, and you know. So I waited the next day for her to get off, and she simply called my mother and just said, "Lorraine gonna be living with me now." And that was it, you know. So I was staying with her for quite a while, you know, and of course, I got tired of staying there, left there, went to one of my aunt's house, stayed there, then went to another aunt's house and stayed there, and you know, it just continued and continued until I ended up getting into some trouble, and had warrants out for me, so I was on the run for a while, and started staying with my cousin Tony, you know, and eventually, of course, I got caught, went to prison, but
What were the warrants for?
attempted murder,
How was it? How did that come about?
the drug game. But this first one ended up coming behind a female. I ended up having a little girlfriend, and she had a son at the time, an infant son, to be exact. She had a son, and her son's father got a little mad because he no longer has his girl anymore. I have his girl. But to me, he was like a kid to me, you know, because he was 2 years younger than me. He was from the county, so I'm like, you know, you're not ready for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was, so what happened is, he called her a couple times, and you know, she would be like, "Tell him yourself," and you know, and I'm like, you know, I ain't got time for that. He's a kid to me, you know. And just so happened, one particular day, he called and I answered the phone, and he started threatening me over the phone and everything, and I told him, you know, I said, "Look, you're not on my level, so if I was you, I would quit while you were here." And he kept on and kept on. Then he told me what he was going to do to me once he saw me. And I actually ended up seeing him one day and put my hands on him, and he ran. And he threatened me again. So how the attempt murder came about is, after a while, I stopped messing with the female, and I just so happened to be at this McDonald's, and he pulls up beside me, and it's me and another dude that always be with me, and this female that I'm just starting to talk to, and she was a county girl, so you know, she had no clue who I was, how I was, or nothing like that at the time. And just so happened, the female in the car beside him was a female I used to mess with, sister. So the sister comes around there and tell me that such and such, tell him he wants to squash it. So I said, "Okay, tell him come over here and shake my hand like a man." He shakes my hand, and that's supposed to be it. But I didn't find out till a little later that the sister that I used to mess with, he now messes with her. So when he finds out that I used to mess with his girl that he has now, so of course he has some feelings about that. But nothing came of it that night, and like 6 months later, we're at a whole different McDonald's. And at this time, it's me and my rap buddy that's on that case. Rest in peace, Aggie. But we're at a different McDonald's, and he's in there, two of his cousins in there, and another one of his buddies. And you know, I come in, I make my order, and they leave out, and I'm waiting for my stuff because I had what they call the grill order, so it takes like 10-15 minutes. And they had been gone all that time. And sure as shot, I come out, and they pull up the car and like ask me what's up with me and him, and I'm like, man, that's squash, you know. So they jump out the car and show you what's up and all of this. So be having mindful, they county dudes, they're younger than me, and I know they're not on my level, but they jump out the car, and when he jump out the car and tells me he gonna show me what's up, I actually thought he was coming to shoot me. But he put his fists up. And like I told you earlier, if you're my size or a little bigger than me, I got you. So when he put his fists up, I told him, I said, you know, I don't curse anymore, but I told him, I said, I'm gonna beat the so-and-so out you out here. That's what I was doing to him. We was fighting, I'm talking to him, telling him how I'm gonna beat him up and everything. But this was his cousin that I'm fighting. Him and another one of his cousins are standing there with their hands in it, dip like they have a gun though. So after I got the dude on the ground, I'm beating him, I see this bright flash. One of them hit me in the head with a bat.
Oh.
Hit me in the head with a bat. And the whole time that this going on, my rap buddy done snuck to the car. So when he coming from the car, I started seeing them running. And so the one that I originally was fighting, I runs him down and I slam him. And they telling me, Ray, we gonna kill you, we gonna kill you. So I got the gun from my rap buddy and said, if y'all wanna kill me, I'm gonna kill him now. And I shot him like 3 times. And you know, of course they told on me, so I ended up getting 15 years for that. You know?
But he didn't die?
No, he
okay.
didn't die.
That's good.
You know, so that was one of them, but I had quite a few of those. So, you know, that's what I kept going back and forth to prison for, you know, violence, you know.
But if you're in the drug game, I thought it was only about business.
It's supposed to be about business, but that was like me actually defending myself because actually I didn't get 15 years for that one because I was fighting another attempt at the same time. That one I actually ended up beating because, you know, there was 2 females there came to pick up from the work at McDonald's. And what happened is once we started going to court, they had to tell the truth that they waited for me and I guess they was trying to show off for the girls because in the car all of them discussed who was going to kill me, and none of them had a gun. But I guess they was trying to show off for the girl, and it was 2 females, and they had to tell them, you know, that that's what they discussed, you know. And of course I got hit in the head with a bat, so you can kill me with a bat as well. So I ended up getting that one dismissed, but I got found guilty for another one probably a few months later because I was going to trial for both at the same time because before I got locked up for that one, I ended up doing that to somebody else, you know. But it's like the streets is for us, it's like the only way out, you know.
Now I have to play
devil's advocate.
Yeah, well, maybe not, maybe just true. I don't know because I hear it all the time. Look, you know, the streets are there, but you don't have to get caught up in them. You can turn from that. I mean, would you now in your situation now because you're talking to people now from your experience, right?
Right.
So when you run into somebody and they say to you, you know, Ray, listen, the streets are here, man. That's the only thing for me. What are you gonna say to that?
Well, I mean, what I do now is I encourage everybody not to go the way of the streets. Of course, I encourage everybody that, you know, that's my statement there, you know.
But if he says, this is the only thing I can do, what's your answer to that?
My answer to it is no, it's not, you know.
Okay.
You have to apply yourself, actually. And you have to develop a passion. You know, for me, my passion was the streets. Had I had a passion for anything other than the streets, I think I would have excelled in it, you know, if the opportunity was there. You know, now you're afforded more opportunities than you were when we were coming up,
right.
You know, and once you develop that passion for something, you know, and you have this vision, you know that you have a process that you have to go through in order to obtain that vision, though.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't want to go through the process, you know, because they really don't have the passion for it. Because for me, your passion will tell everything, because based on your passion, your preparation and your pursuit will tell it all, you know. And I say that all the time, that when I have a passion for something, I have a desire for it, then it's fueled. And regardless if it's good or bad, once it's fueled, I'm going to get it. You know, just so happened now that my passion runs on the positive side opposed to it being on that negative side for all of those years. Because, you know, for me, the negativity brought all of this glamour around me. You know, I would get my, like they say, 15 seconds of fame. You know, I would get that. You know, I've been on the news and everything for some of these things I've done. You know, I done had my little 15 seconds and everything. But that's what was driving me at the time. I had no drive for nothing else. And I loved school. I loved school. But I didn't get the same enjoyment out of school that I got in the streets. I really went to school, you know, in the beginning because being as though I was getting A's all the time, my teachers and everybody would praise me, you know. But once I got to high school, I no longer wanted teachers to praise me. Even though I was in college prep, I no longer wanted the praise from the teachers. I wanted it from the females, you know. and it was like, the good guy finished last, you know. Right. So I was like, nah, I can't be this good guy. I gotta take on this bad guy role, and I gotta embrace it, you know. And that's what I did. And then, you know, again, I'm light skinned. Then my name is LaRae, so you don't have no other LaRaes out there. So when you talk about LaRae, I know you're talking about me. So, you know, and I ran with it, you know. And my mother would hear my name all the time, you know. It was a point where my mom, she started suffering from health issues because of me, you know. Man, I would come home at night, and I was young. I would come home at night, and our kitchen sink was right by our back door. And we only used our back door. So it was a sink, and there was a window over top of the sink and the back door. And I would come home, and my mother would always be at the sink, you know. And I didn't pay attention for a while that she was always at the sink. And then this one particular night I come in, and she's at the sink, but I look at the sink, and there's no dishes in the sink. And I asked, I'm like, why are you always at the sink? She said, because I always wait to see if you come through this come home at night. And she got to sharing some things with me about whenever she would hear a police siren or anything, she would always, you know, get jittery. Sometimes she would cry, and if it was too late, she would worry about the phone call she getting ready to get. So she ended up scratching like a hole in her forehead from a nervous condition. But yet, none of that stopped me. Because like I said, you know, the only passion I had was the streets. You know, that was my only
What did you
passion.
get out of the streets?
I got, I guess you can say the ghetto love. I got a reputation. I felt like in power. I actually had got, you know, confidence from the streets, you know, like.
What type of confidence?
Confidence within myself that if I can survive this right here, you know, I'm like invincible, you know, because I've been in many battles, and it seems like, and that was one of the things that my rap buddy had said to me with that incident at McDonald's. That was one of the things he said to me before everything took place. He said, why would everybody come at us and we always come out on top? And my response was, I don't know. And that's how I felt like I can't be stopped. I can't be stopped.
Did that play out when you went to prison?
Same reputation.
But did that work in prison?
For me, because I had already been locked up quite a few times prior to, but I hadn't been found guilty. So all of those times that I would go over there and wait for my court date, I had got this reputation because I would stab a lot of people up, and I actually was doing it out of fear because of what I saw on TV. I'm light skinned. They're going to try to have sex with me. So this is not happening. So if you looked at me, that would be the first thing came to my mind. And what I would do is, if I saw you look at me or something, I would stab you. You know, I would go on lockup and back then you only went on lockup for 3 days. So I would go on lockup and I would come back off, and if somebody else looked at me, I would stab them again. And I had my street reputation as well. But what happened for me is I had a cousin that was in there. And my cousin, he had been locked up like 12 years. And he was home and he went back, so he's waiting on a court date. And just so happened, I didn't recognize him because he had been gone for so long, so I didn't recognize him. But he was a Sunni Muslim. Mm-hmm. And he was the leader of them, and he was a big dude. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a little frilled hopper at the time. And I got a little clique with me, and my specific instructions was, do not mess with none of them. Right. You know, stay away from them because they are killing people in here. Stay away from them. Yeah. And just so happened, I'm in the rec hall this particular day, and the dude that I'm telling them to stay away from calls me. I'm sitting like 2 rows in front of him. He called my name, and I'm like, oh my God, this get ready to go down, and he get ready to kill me because he, you know, back then I probably wore like maybe 100 pounds, and we talking him like 2 something, and I mean height and thick. So I'm like, man. So I sit down, and he said, look, shorty, he said, everybody that look at you, you don't have to stab them, you know. It's not like that with you. So, you know, I'm nervous. So he says to me, he said, you don't even know who I am, do you? So I'm like, nah. So he's like, I'm Gurney. So I'm like, Gurney? So I'm looking at him. I'm like, Gurney Edwards? And he like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, so it's my cousin. Mm-hmm. So what that did for me there was I really walked around the jail now with my chest poked out because I knew I had my cousin in there. And he had, he was telling me that he had people looking out for me, but you know, I'm stabbing everybody that look at me, you know. I don't want to, he don't want me to cause this uproar between me and his brothers, because if they looking out for me and they just so happen to be looking at me. So he had set me down, had a nice long talk with me, and from that point on, it was like, oh, it's no holds barred with me now, you know. But when I ended up going into the Division of Correction, everything I did on the streets and everything I did in the jail, all of that followed me, and I was intelligent, you know, because remember I said I went through school and all that, so I was intelligent, and people just seem to always gravitate towards me. Like my mother said it since day one, like, Ray, you like a natural born leader. Everybody wants to do what LaRae do. Everybody wants to do what LaRae tell them to do. And it followed me in prison because when I was in there, you know, I ended up taking over this board where I had to meet with the ward, and then what they call an inmate advisory council. I became the president of that, so we had a group that had to sit in front of the administration and, you know, all of that type of stuff. And of course, I did crooked stuff in there too, you know. So, I mean, that was the excitement for me then, because it was like I really never gave myself a chance to find excitement anywhere else. Yeah, I played little league sports and stuff, but it wasn't exciting to me like how me actually having control, so to speak, over a body of people, you know. that there, that had me in awe. Like, yeah, you know. And even my pastor says it. You know, Pastor Dave said the same thing, that I have leadership qualities. You know, and it's just a blessing to see that I don't use them in the same way I used to. You know, he said that, you know, I was born with that gift from God. It's just that I used it to destroy people's lives, and that's what I was doing.
So could a visionary instructor, counselor, custodian, somebody along the way, as you came through the educational system, have looked at you and said, you know what, Lorraine might have something. Let's try to get him just out of the basic stuff and put him into something that challenges him. So something like a, you know, Eagle Scout program or something that's going to challenge him as a man. Would that probably have grabbed your attention more?
Well, I actually was in ROTC.
Okay.
And became a sergeant at ROTC. I had the rank of a sergeant, but I wasn't old enough yet. Mm-hmm. And I was supposed to went to boot camp and everything. But, you know, all of the tests I had to take and everything, I was knocking them down. But that wasn't holding my interest. I only was in ROTC to keep my mother quiet at the time.
Oh, okay.
You know, that's the only reason. And they thought I was going to go into the Navy and make it a career and all that. I knew different. You know, just like on one of my first charges ever, me and my buddy got into a little shootout and we got locked up, and they gave us the option because we had went to the recruiter to see if we can enlist so we can get out of this charge. And they accepted us. So when we were going to court, the deal was, we'll wipe this off and you go into service. And they gave that to both of us. And he took it. And I was like, after I got in there, I was like, man, I'd rather go ahead to prison. I ain't going into the service. I was like, no, you go ahead. And he went to the service for his little 3 or 4 years. And I was like, y'all can go ahead and take me on back. Well, we can start my trial because, nah, I ain't going for this.
Why was that?
I couldn't see myself in the service. I couldn't see outside of the streets. I couldn't see outside of the streets. I was so one-dimensional at
What
that
year
time.
was that?
This was around 86.
Oh, so there was no major war going on or anything?
No.
So, I mean...
Just wasn't going. Like, I didn't want to go. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I regret not going or anything like that, because he went, he did his whole enlistment, and he came back home, and what ended up happening, he ended up going to prison, you know, because he went right back to the streets. You know, it was just like I have a couple buddies who went to college. And once college was over, they didn't have a career, they ended up going to prison.
For drugs?
For drugs. For drugs.
That fast, easy money.
That fast money. Easy? Nah, and see, that's the notion that everybody has with it, is fast, easy money, but it's a job as well. You know, it's a job as well, and it's nothing easy about giving your life away, you know, dying, going to prison. There's nothing easy about that, you know, but a lot of people always say fast and easy. It actually becomes a full-time job the deeper you get into it, because your business hours can be over, but somebody always plotting to get you, you know. So while you're at home, you're still like looking and observing because you're still at work. So I mean, it's a full-time job. I used to look at it like fast and easy too, until some of the consequences I went through weren't easy at all. You know, some of the sacrifices I had to make weren't easy at all. You know, so it was tough. It was tough, you know. But with us, we really don't know any other way, so we adapt to it. We accept it, just like going back and forth to prison. Guys accept it because they feel as though this is the way. This is the way. So when you figure this is the way, you know it's just a matter of time before you have to do your stint, come back home, do your stint, come back home, because that's what you feel as though the way is for you. So you adapt to it. You know, I mean, I know it's been a couple of times where I was looking forward to going to prison for a break. Like, man, I need a break. There's been times where I was fighting cases and was like, man, just take me over Division of Correction. I'm tired of going through this. Just take me over there. And that's the attitude a lot of young guys have, because that's the attitude I had when I was young. You know, as I got older, I pretty much still had the same attitude all the way up until maybe a few years ago. You know, prison was not something that I was looking forward to anymore. But yet I still went back, but I wasn't like looking forward to it. And when you get into that lifestyle though, you know, and like the guys that used to work for me, I used to tell them all the same thing. Look forward to one of three things happening to you, if not all three. Locked up, stuck up, shot up. It's going to happen, you know. In what order, I don't know, but one of the three, at least one of those three is going to happen. If you're not willing to deal with that, then don't get in it. And that was my golden rule for whoever came underneath of me. My golden rule was, if you weren't willing to accept all three, don't get in it. If you're not willing to accept the major consequence of it, don't get in it. You know, and that's how I went through life, that I would weigh my pros and cons, and if I was willing to accept the greatest consequence, I would do it. And I always was with, if the reward worth the risk, I would do it. You know.
So what was the greatest consequence about the military that you were not willing to accept?
My consequence for going in the military, I would be leaving the streets behind. That was my thought. That was my thought. You know, I gotta be true about it. That I had a girl at the time that I was not trying to leave. You know, that weighed in. I knew that I would be somewhere away from home for a long period of time. That weighed in. My mother actually weighed in, even though she was encouraging me to go. I didn't want to leave my mother. You know,
but your alternative was prison, where you'd be losing all the same stuff you're just losing now.
Yeah, but if I was going to prison, it was on my own terms, because I wanted to be in the streets. I didn't want to be in the military. Now, if I wanted to be in the military and was willing to give that up, that would have been something different. But I didn't want to be in the military. To be in the streets, and I know that I can lose this, that, and the other, and I still choose to be in the streets, then I wait my consequences. But for me to go in the military where I don't want to go myself, but everybody else is pushing me to go, and I got to leave this behind, I wasn't willing to make that sacrifice. You know, I was real selfish, you know, and I thought that I was doing what was right for me, and of course it wasn't, but that's what I thought, because of course it was like the streets had brainwashed me, so to speak, that I looked no further than the streets. Any opportunity came my way, I looked no further than the streets. And even when I came out here, you know, my therapist and everything I used to talk to, I used to tell them the same thing. While I'm out here, I only planned on staying out here for a month anyway. I was only coming out here a month, and I was going back home. And I just so happened to get a wonderful therapist, and I had another wonderful therapist, and I shared with them the same thing. If I don't find anything out here to wow me like the street life did, I won't be out here for long, you know. And that was my thing. And just so happened, I got introduced to a few guys and Bible study and all of that, and a few of my therapists took me by the hand, you know, so to speak. And put that extra effort with me, saying that they saw something in me and they recognized this, that, and the other. And I had no clue what they were talking about.
And you came out here for substance abuse, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so you started getting high on your own supplies, did?
Of course.
Okay,
Of course.
so the substance that you were abusing was
Heroin.
heroin. Okay, so you came out here to to be in recovery for heroin, and that is what took you away from your desire to go back to the street, that recovery part.
Right.
Okay,
Well, the recovery part didn't.
No.
No, because I would be lying if I said the recovery part is what did it. The God aspect is what led me away from the streets, because my plan was to come out here, get clean, go back home, sell drugs, do everything involved in the drug game except for using it. That was my plan. And once I got the God aspect implemented, that was no longer my plan.
Okay, so was it your choice to come out here? Was this a court mandate or anything?
No. It was my choice.
Okay, so you were free with of your obligations with the courts, and you decided you wanted to clean your life up.
Right.
And what made you choose this area?
Well, I used to say I don't know, but it had to be God who put that in my head, because prior to, I thought I was doing okay. So for a thought like that to come in my head, it had to be God who put that there. I couldn't have came up with that, because I actually thought that the way I was living was all right. So the thought came in my head, and I acted on it actually. And it was all like simultaneously that once I had this thought in my head, I kid you not, on TV came a commercial for it.
For what?
For recovery.
Okay.
And I'm like looking at the TV like, you gotta be kidding me. So I called the number, and they gave me another number to call for foundations, and I called them, and they gave me 3 choices: Memphis, Atlanta, or California. And I had never been on a plane, and I had vowed that I would never get on a plane in my life. I had made that vow years ago, and I chose California. And I had been through recovery and everything quite a few times, so nobody believed that I was going to go to California, because LeRay's never been on a plane. He said he'll never get on a plane. So I took that leap of faith. I got on the plane, and you know, everybody was like, if he get on this plane, he's serious. And you know, I got on the plane. Was I terrified on my way to the airport? Terrified. But I got there. My mother was there, and my mother's a pastor. Her husband's a pastor. Her husband now is a pastor. So when I got there and they were there, you know, I had tears coming down my eyes because of this plane. And she put her arms around me, said a prayer, and instantly I was like, oh, I'm ready to go. Let's go do this, you know. And I didn't look back. I walked straight to the security checkpoint and everything. I ain't turn around, I ain't look back. And also I thought coming out here would be like a little vacation for me as well. And I came out here in June, and it was like 12:30 at night when I got here, and it was like 107 degrees. So I actually called home and was like, well, I actually have located hell. I know where hell sits now, you know. And since being out here, like I said, a little more than 2 years, almost 2.5 years, I've only been back to Baltimore twice. I went back, and the very first time I went back, I waited to I was out here over a year. You know, went back home for 3 days and came back, and maybe after I came back after that, I think I left again like 9 months later, and that was for my son's wedding. You know, but yeah, I done made California my home.
Well, Lorraine, I think we're gonna look at on the second session. We'd like to go into your actual process through recovery. We may go back on some of the other things that I think people want to hear a little bit more about, how the streets grab young men and hold on to them, and then that breakaway process that takes you into the point. And then with this new epidemic, they're now calling it, for heroin use in the country now, how you actually were able to recover and how you see that as progressing in your future. So, Lorraine, thank you for your time, and
Well,
next time we'll go on to the recovery.